There comes a moment when you must stop asking, how can I make this person understand what they did to me? And begin asking, why am I still giving them the power to disturb the life I'm trying to build? Listen carefully. Your assignment is not revenge. Your assignment is restoration. You were not created to spend your future proving your value to someone who benefited from making you doubt it. You were not given a mind so that another person could fill it with confusion. You were not given a voice so that you could spend every day defending your right to be respected. The person who manipulated you may expect you to remain emotionally available. They may expect another explanation, another argument, another chance, another reaction. But the day you become calm, disciplined, and unavailable to manipulation, the entire relationship changes. Their greatest consequence is not your anger, it is your freedom. Their greatest loss is not hearing you shout. It is realizing that they can no longer control your emotions, interrupt your purpose, or enter your life without respecting your boundaries. Today, you are going to learn that the most powerful response to manipulation is not destruction, it is transformation. You do not defeat darkness by becoming dark. You defeat it by becoming so clear, strong, and purposeful that darkness can no longer live in you. You must understand that unhealthy control cannot survive without emotional access. A manipulative person may appear powerful, but much of that power comes from your reactions. Every time you argue for hours, defend your character, explain your intentions, or desperately try to make them understand your pain, you may unknowingly give them what they are seeking: your attention, your energy, and proof that they can still disturb your inner world. This is why emotional discipline is essential. Emotional discipline does not mean pretending that you are not hurt. It does not mean suppressing your feelings or acting cold. It means recognizing that not every accusation deserves an answer, not every insult deserves a reaction, and not every invitation to conflict deserves your participation. Some people do not begin arguments to reach understanding. They begin arguments to create confusion. They may change the subject, deny what happened, focus on your tone, or accuse you of doing the very thing they have done. Their objective may not be resolution. Their objective may be to keep you emotionally trapped. You must learn to recognize the difference between a healthy conversation and an emotional trap. A healthy conversation allows both people to speak. It accepts responsibility. It respects boundaries. It aims to solve the problem. An unhealthy conversation keeps moving the goalposts. No matter how clearly you explain yourself, another accusation appears. No matter how calmly you speak, your words are twisted. No matter how much evidence you present, the truth is rejected. At that moment, wisdom tells you to stop participating. Your silence is not weakness when it is guided by clarity. Walking away is not defeat when the conversation has become abusive. Refusing to explain yourself repeatedly is not arrogance. It is the recognition that your energy has value. You were not created to become an endless source of emotional supply for someone who refuses accountability. Your mind was not designed to spend every day replaying conversations, preparing defenses, and wondering how to prove that you are a good person. When you know your character, you do not need to place it on trial every time someone makes a false accusation. The manipulative pattern often depends on predictability. They provoke you and you react. They withdraw affection and you chase. They criticize you and you work harder to gain approval. They create distance and you begin questioning your worth. The cycle continues because they know which emotional button to press. But what happens when the button no longer works? What happens when you stop chasing after silent treatment? What happens when you refuse to debate an obvious lie? What happens when you calmly end a disrespectful conversation? What happens when their criticism no longer causes you to abandon your standards? The balance of power changes, not because you have gained control over them, but because you have regained control over yourself. Self-control is the foundation of freedom. A person who can control your emotional state can often influence your decisions. If they can make you afraid, they can make you surrender. If they can make you feel guilty, they can make you return. If they can make you feel worthless, they can make you accept less than you deserve. That is why healing requires you to separate your identity from their opinion. Their praise does not increase your value. Their rejection does not decrease your value. Their anger does not prove that you are wrong. Their silence does not mean you must chase them. Their accusations do not automatically become truth. You must become rooted in a deeper understanding of who you are. When your identity is stable, manipulation loses its grip. You can listen without absorbing every insult. You can observe behavior without making excuses for it. You can make decisions based on truth instead of temporary emotion. This does not mean you become cruel. It means you become clear. You can respond briefly and respectfully. You can say, I will not continue this conversation while I am being insulted. You can say, I have already explained my decision. You can say, I am not available for this behavior. Then you must support your words with action. A boundary without action becomes only a request. When someone repeatedly crosses your boundary and faces no consequence, they learn that your words are flexible. They learn that if they pressure you long enough, you will eventually surrender. This is why consistency matters. You cannot protect your peace only when you feel strong. You must protect it when you feel lonely, guilty, nostalgic, and uncertain. There may be moments when you want to respond. You may feel tempted to write a long message explaining everything they did. You may imagine that the perfect words will finally awaken their conscience. But ask yourself a serious question. How many times have you already explained? If someone understands your pain but continues the behavior, the problem is not a lack of information. The problem is a lack of respect. Stop giving additional explanations to someone who uses your explanations as material for another argument. Stop presenting evidence to someone committed to denying reality. Stop exhausting yourself in an attempt to receive validation from the same person who benefited from making you doubt yourself. Your healing begins when you stop feeding the cycle. Redirect your attention toward your health, your purpose, your responsibilities, and the people who treat you with dignity. Every hour you reclaim from pointless conflict can be invested in rebuilding your life. Every reaction you withhold strengthens your self-command. Every boundary you maintain teaches your mind that your peace is worth protecting. The goal is not to make another person suffer. The goal is to become unavailable to manipulation. Whatever discomfort they experience from losing control is a consequence of their behavior, not an act of revenge from you. You do not need to punish them. You need to stop rewarding the pattern. You do not need to defeat them in an argument. You need to stop entering arguments designed to defeat your peace. The moment you stop providing unlimited attention, emotional reactions, and repeated access, you begin taking your life back. Their greatest loss is not your anger. It is discovering that your emotions are no longer under their command. The moment your life stops revolving around another person's approval is the moment your real power begins to return. Manipulative people often gain influence by making you believe that your value depends on how they see you. When they praise you, you feel worthy. When they withdraw attention, you question yourself. When they criticize you, you rush to explain, improve, apologize, or prove that you deserve respect. Slowly, without realizing it, you begin living as a performer instead of living as a person with purpose. You must understand that approval can become an invisible chain. It does not look dangerous because it often arrives disguised as love, acceptance, or validation. Yet when your peace depends on someone else's mood, you are no longer emotionally free. When your confidence rises and falls according to another person's attention, you have handed them authority over your identity. No human being should possess that much control over your inner life. Your worth existed before they recognized you, and it remains even when they reject you. Their inability to appreciate your character does not reduce your character. Their criticism does not cancel your potential. Their silence does not erase your significance. You must stop using another person's behavior as a measuring instrument for your value. A controlling individual may repeatedly move the standard. Today, you are told that you are too emotional. Tomorrow, you are accused of being too distant. Today, you are criticized for speaking. Tomorrow, you are blamed for remaining silent. You keep adjusting yourself, believing that one day you will finally become acceptable. But you cannot satisfy someone whose expectations are designed to keep you uncertain. The problem is not always that you have failed to meet the standard. Sometimes the standard was created to ensure that you never feel secure. This is why you must build an identity that is not dependent on unstable opinions. You need principles that remain firm when people misunderstand you. You need goals that continue even when nobody applauds. You need routines that strengthen your mind, body, finances, faith, and emotional health. You need trustworthy relationships where respect is mutual and where affection is not used as a reward for obedience. Begin rebuilding your life in practical ways. Return to the interests you abandoned. Reconnect with safe people from whom you became isolated. Learn a skill that increases your independence. Take care of your physical health. Organize your finances. Create a peaceful environment. Keep promises to yourself. Every small act of self-respect teaches your mind that your life belongs to you again. Do not underestimate the power of keeping a promise to yourself. When you say you will wake up at a certain time and you do it, confidence grows. When you decide not to respond to disrespect and you remain disciplined, confidence grows. When you complete a task without needing praise, confidence grows. Self-trust is rebuilt through consistent action, not motivational words alone. You may initially feel guilty when you stop seeking their approval. You may feel as though you are becoming selfish because you are no longer constantly available. But protecting your energy is not selfish. Choosing peace is not arrogance. Refusing manipulation is not cruelty. You are not responsible for maintaining someone else's comfort at the expense of your mental and emotional stability. There is a difference between healthy consideration and unhealthy dependence. Healthy consideration allows you to listen to feedback while maintaining your identity. Unhealthy dependence causes you to abandon your beliefs, boundaries, and needs just to avoid rejection. A mature person can hear another opinion without allowing that opinion to become a verdict on their entire life. Learn to ask yourself better questions. Instead of asking, will they approve of this? Ask, does this decision agree with my values? Instead of asking, will they be upset? Ask, is this respectful, safe, and healthy? Instead of asking, how can I make them understand me? Ask, am I acting with integrity and clarity? These questions return authority to the right place. You may never receive the apology, recognition, or validation you hoped for. But you do not need to delay your future while waiting for someone to admit what they did. Your healing can begin without their cooperation. Your purpose can continue without their permission. Your happiness can grow without their applause. The strongest response to someone who tried to control your identity is not to make them jealous. It is not to display your success for their attention. That still places them at the center of your decisions. True freedom occurs when you no longer need them to notice your growth. Build quietly. Heal honestly. Grow consistently. Let your confidence come from the life you are creating, not from the reaction you are trying to produce. When your purpose becomes stronger than your desire for approval, manipulation loses its power. You become difficult to control because praise cannot purchase your obedience and criticism cannot destroy your direction. Your life was never meant to be an audition for someone else's acceptance. You were given gifts to develop, responsibilities to fulfill, and a future to build. Stop standing at the door of a person who keeps questioning whether you deserve entrance. Turn around and build a life in which dignity, peace, wisdom, and purpose are already waiting for you. There comes a point in your life when you must understand that some people will never learn through conversation because they have trained themselves to avoid accountability. You may explain your pain with patience. You may present the facts clearly. You may remind them of their promises. You may describe how their behavior affected your mind, your confidence, and your peace. Yet instead of listening, they may deny, minimize, blame, distract, or turn the entire conversation against you. This is when wisdom must replace endless explanation. You cannot force self-awareness into someone who benefits from remaining unaware. You cannot argue another person into becoming responsible. You cannot keep sacrificing your emotional health in the hope that one more conversation will finally make them understand. At some point, your actions must communicate what your words have failed to establish. Consequences are powerful because they remove comfort from destructive behavior. When someone repeatedly disrespects you, but continues receiving your time, loyalty, attention, support, and forgiveness, they may begin to believe that their behavior has no real cost. Every time you return without change, the pattern is strengthened. Every time you abandon your boundary to avoid conflict, you teach them that persistence will eventually defeat your standards. This is why distance can become an educational act. It is not revenge. It is not punishment. It is the natural result of repeated choices. When a person refuses to respect your presence, they must be prepared to experience your absence. When they misuse access to your heart, they must understand that access is not guaranteed forever. You do not need to scream, you do not need to threaten, you do not need to create a dramatic final scene. The strongest decision is often made quietly. You simply stop participating in the cycle. You stop responding to every provocation. You stop defending yourself against every false accusation. You stop rushing to repair situations you did not damage. You stop carrying responsibilities that belong to the other person. This requires discipline because manipulation often becomes stronger when boundaries become real. The person may suddenly become apologetic. They may promise immediate change. They may remind you of good memories. They may accuse you of being cruel, selfish, or unforgiving. They may involve other people in an attempt to pressure you, but you must remember that emotional intensity is not the same as transformation. Real change is not revealed through desperate words spoken when access is being lost. Real change is revealed through consistent behavior over time. It accepts responsibility without excuses. It respects your boundaries without resentment. It does not demand immediate trust. It does not pressure you to forget what happened. It understands that rebuilding safety requires patience, humility, and evidence. You must allow people to experience the results of their choices. When you constantly rescue someone from consequences, you may believe you are showing love, but you may actually be preventing growth. Some lessons cannot be delivered through lectures. They must be experienced. The loss of your presence may become the mirror they refuse to look into while you are still available. However, you must be careful not to turn consequences into a hidden strategy for getting them back. Do not create distance while secretly waiting for them to chase you. Do not become silent only to provoke a reaction. Do not rebuild your life merely to make them jealous. If your healing is still designed around their response, then they are still controlling the direction of your life. Your freedom begins when the consequence is not a performance. You leave because you value your peace. You remain consistent because your dignity matters. You stop explaining because your boundary no longer requires their agreement. You move forward because your future deserves your full attention. Sometimes the consequence is permanent separation. Sometimes it is limited communication. Sometimes it is refusing to discuss personal matters. Sometimes it is ending financial support, emotional labor, or repeated rescue. The form may differ, but the principle remains the same. Unhealthy behavior must no longer receive unlimited access to your life. You must understand that forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can release bitterness without reopening the door. You can wish someone well without inviting them back into a position where they can harm you again. You can stop carrying anger while still remembering the lesson. Never feel guilty for allowing consequences to speak. You gave explanations. You offered opportunities. You demonstrated patience. But patience without boundaries becomes permission. Mercy without wisdom becomes self-neglect. Let your consistency become the message. Let your absence communicate the value of the presence they mistreated. Let your peace demonstrate that you are no longer available for confusion. You do not need to destroy anyone. You simply need to stop protecting them from the natural results of their behavior. The greatest consequence is not your revenge. It is the moment they realize that the person they once controlled has become emotionally independent, mentally clear, and strong enough to walk away without looking back.